Welcome to the next episode of Just Peachie. I'm Peachie Thompson, and I'm your host. Just Peachie is a show where we interview leaders and subject matter experts in the fields of insurance, finances, and taxes. We also have a lifestyle section where we talk about everything and anything under the sun. I'm so excited to introduce you to our next speaker, Sapna Academy's Director and Facilitator, Ms. Jo Lawson. Jo, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So, Jo, for over a decade, you've dedicated your life to really working with kids. I know that you've worked in the public school system, and you've also earned a degree in the secondary education from Flagler College. Mm-hmm. So, tell us what these experiences mean and what you do at Sapna Academy.
Okay, so I was a teacher in public school for over a decade, and I love working with students. I love getting to know them and connecting with them with their passion and interests. However, in public school, that can sometimes be difficult, especially when you have such large numbers of students that you're in charge of and you're trying to get to know. So over the years, I really started connecting with self-directed learning. And so I would have students in my classes in public school. I would give them some big question based on our subject, and then they would delve into it in any way that they, saw fit. They could do a play, they could write a script for a play, or they could do a commercial, or they could write a paper or take a test. It was, students are so different, and all of us are really different. And so I really tried to create a space where they had the ability to showcase their own talents. And so throughout the years, it got more and more difficult, especially as testing came, it's just such a huge part of public school now.
Yeah.
It just wears on you. And so it created a really stifling environment for me as a creative person. And really, it was hard for me to work with students in that way. So I started trying to explore different ways that I could connect with students. And I tutored with kids for a while after I had my daughter. And then my daughter kind of came to this place where she was entering VPK, and what were we going to do with her? We weren't really sure if that school environment was what we wanted for her. And so we created the space that we wanted, and that's how Sapna Academy came to be. And it is a self-directed learning center, and all of our students, they range in age from 4 all the way up to 15 years old right now. And they work together. Everyone's a teacher, everyone's a learner, and we just really try to get to know students and zero in on what they're passionate about and their interests, and then try to integrate education and academics into those things, which really allows them to explore their own creativity as well as develop a sense of independence. Because instead of always asking for help, it's something that they're passionate about and they actually know about. So they take the reins and they become the teachers or the facilitators to the rest of us, and then learn so much more through that process.
So is what you just described what we would call a self-directed environment?
Yes.
So I think if I were posing another question, I'd be like, what does it mean for my child to be walking into this different learning environment?
Right.
I know if you're a public school student right now, you have a very rigid schedule where you're walking into the school and you have, math in the morning, some enrichment or whatever it is. So how is that different?
So the flow of our day is kids come in, and usually at the beginning of the week, we talk about what offerings we're making. So my husband and I, as facilitators, we make offerings for the students that center around their passions and interests, as well as our own. And then we also have offerings from our students, like maybe some student, we have one that really loves to teach kids how to draw. So he'll teach students how to draw. We have someone else who loves to read stories. So they'll read stories to students and just different things. I mean, we have a 15-year-old who she works really well with kids to teach them math and different things like that. Whereas we have an older boy who loves to play sports. So we call him, he's kind of our little coach that works with kids. So the flow of our day is that at the beginning of the week, we set out our offerings, and then the kids can choose from a variety of different activities that they want to participate in. A lot of it looks like play, because it is. Play is one of the best ways to learn. So we play all sorts of different things. And then throughout the week, I take pictures, we talk, so we can document the sort of things that they're participating in. And then when it comes to the end of the week, we talk about, what did you enjoy this week? What do you want to continue working on? Were there any long-term projects? Did you finish short-term goals that you were working on? So we can kind of talk about what they want to pursue in the next week. And then over the weekend, I kind of curate our curriculum, if you would call it that. Each weekend, I really take the time to look back and reflect on what we did, and then what we want to work on and sometimes our goals are, we have long-term goals. Like we did a Halloween performance. So we worked on that for a long time, getting ready for that. We'll have one at Christmas time as well. So sometimes it's short things that we do just within that day, but sometimes it can span throughout the whole week or a month. It just depends on what the kids are interested in. Right now, I'm working with one of my students. He's a really amazing artist, to develop a book that he saw based on the Northwest part of the United States. And we're taking the ideas. It was monsters that lived under bridges. And so we have lots of bridges in Jacksonville. And so we're researching the bridges and how they came to be built. So we're reading, we're doing research. I'm teaching him those skills, but then we're developing these monsters who are taking on the characteristics of the bridges, and he's learning those sorts of creative writing details. And then, but we're also highlighting his talent, which is art. And it's just those sort of beautiful coincidences happen all the time.
So how fun is that? So I heard you say a variety of things that to me spells out that the kid is empowered to work on a specific skill, perhaps, or a specific talent that they'd like to work on for that week. So this is a learning environment, it sounds to me, that is empowering to the person, to the kid.
Exactly. So like in a traditional setting, a teacher would be in the front of the class, and all the kids would be sitting listening to the teacher. Whereas in our classroom, it's flipped, right? Many times it's the student taking the predominant kind of leadership role, and I'm there to facilitate and kind of guide them through the process of reaching their goals.
Why do you think it's important for this type of learning environment in today's world?
Right. So I think it's really important, especially right now, to empower children. So many of them, with what's gone on these past few years, I guess it was years, right? Oh my gosh, it's crazy to say, but
yes.
But it really was such an uncertain time. And we watched so many kids and families flounder, to try to provide this space. And so many kids didn't know what to do with this extra time. They didn't have that empowerment and that independence to say, well, I enjoy doing this, and that's what I'm going to do with this time that, I have off of school, or, this time where I'm trying to work on my school from home. And so I think it's so important, because they are our future, and they have so much to offer now. We don't need to wait until they're 18 years old to figure out what they want to do and then how they're going to contribute to society. I have so many students, and we have so many kids that can contribute right now to our everyday lives, to our community. They can be active members instead of being quiet students that have to sit and take in. They can be the ones that are making the offerings. They have so much creativity and joy that they can bring to the world. And I just think that is so important. And one of the other things that I really love about our center and the style of teaching that we have is that it really allows us to expand on what we call in education teachable moments. So for example, we have quite a few neurodiverse students in our class, in our center. And so if a kid is being bullied or being ostracized or left out of an activity because maybe his disability doesn't allow for it, or that he is unable to participate in the traditional way, we're able to stop. We're able to say, okay, hold up. We're going to stop what we're doing. We're going to have a conversation about this. We're going to let that student share their feelings. We're going to let the rest of you share your feelings as well. And we're going to give you, that time and space to reconcile this. Whereas in education, that's not always, or traditional education, that's not always the case that you can take that time to do it. And also by letting kids explore their own ideas and interests, it frees up their mind when you do want to have those important conversations with them, instead of them thinking, oh man, I would much rather be doing, insert their favorite thing here. They've gotten to do that all day long. So when you say, hey, can I talk to you about this? Maybe it's an academic skill or maybe it's something else, but when you take that time to actually talk with them, they're much more engaged because their mind isn't focusing on that thing that they want to do so badly because they've gotten to do it. Right. And when you show them that you value what they're doing and you value their interests, they value yours too. And they value the things that you're saying. If you show them that you care about their words, they care about what you have to say too.
Isn't that true, Joe, even for adults?
So true.
So with that, talk to me about empathy. I heard you say, if you wanted to talk to the kid about something else, this way of teaching or learning, I should say, how does it instill empathy and compassion in kids?
Right. So one of the challenges, we're kind of we call ourselves a modern day one-room schoolhouse because we have all the kids in there all together. And that can be a challenge to navigate a space with so many different age groups. But they learn self-regulation. So younger kids learn that older kids might need a quiet space, or that they might need this time. But then older kids also understand that younger kids need a space to run around. So kids learn self-regulation. They learn from one another, which is probably my favorite thing that happens at our center all the time. Is that, my 4-year-old daughter teaches, a 13-year-old how to draw a fairy because she's really good at that because she practices it all the time. They learn from one another and able to share that. But then it's also, we really take a hands-off approach, especially when conflicts arise. Mm-hmm. So they're able to, because we're a small group, we are able to allow them to kind of solve their own problems. And we're there to facilitate if someone needs, if they ask for our help, we will come in. But it's so important when kids are developing empathy and compassion that they work through those emotions, that they're allowed to be angry, and then they're allowed to reconcile it with the person who made them angry. And so we have a lot of space for that. And it's been really wonderful. And it helps all types of learners. I said, we have quite a few neurodiverse students. It really allows them to be successful and highlight their talents. For example, I have a student, he's 7. He has Down syndrome, and he is somebody that we might not typically think as a gifted student, like somebody who is academically advanced. Whereas I have another student who is very good at telling you facts. She knows so much about a variety of things that she can just talk to you and talk. But when they sat down to do a puzzle the other day, my 7-year-old boy, he could do a puzzle like that. And, it's just something that in our society today, what we value is facts and knowledge in that way. But he has a spatial awareness that she was struggling with the puzzle. And she was, a simple puzzle for a kid. She, that is not one of her strengths. And so he was able to teach her how to find, and so it's just highlighting and showing that he has something to offer. He has so many things to offer. And he creates such a sense of empathy, and so does she. So it's wonderful to see those sorts of things develop in the center.
It's very, very good to hear those types of examples. So I have 2 questions. The first one is, you have a number of different age groups in the center all at the same time, right? So Well, first of all, what's that age group? I mean, is that from 3 to 16 or,
Right.
5
So
to whatever?
we have kids that come that are from 4 to 15.
Okay.
And we do have them split up a little bit. So my youngest students come at 9 a.m. and they stay until 12. And then my older students, they come, and that's the age break is usually around like 7 or 8, which in traditional schools you can think of that's about third grade, when kids really go from kind of learning to read to reading to learn, right? They're really making that transition into a more academic setting. And so we give families the choice, do you think that your 7 or 8 year old would play down with the younger kids or be up with the older kids? And so at 10 a.m., the older kids come and they stay until 2. So there's about 2 hours of overlap, and we do a lot of play and facilitation from older students or younger students back and forth. And then at 12, when the younger students leave, our older students have the ability to kind of get that more academic work if that's what they're looking for.
So speaking of academic, is this program a replacement of the traditional school system? In other words, say I have a third grader, right? Can she stop going to public school, right? And then can I start sending her to the academy?
Right. So I think that is definitely one of our goals. Right now, we're a learning center. I think that eventually our goal is to become a school where we would have students come full time. And we do have students that come. We meet anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week. Families can choose. And I do have students that come 4 days a week or 3 days a week that get, I think, a very well-rounded education. But I think that we are moving more towards, we're kind of more of a support. I think right now, I think a lot of our kids do some of their academic work at home as well. But I think that our goal is to really move into, this is the type of education that we think is meaningful, and we think that could definitely replace what kids are doing in traditional public schools. And there are many examples of these type of schools. They're Agile learning or self-directed learning centers that do have full-time programs where kids, this is their school that they go to, and they don't do necessarily work outside, because when kids are following their passions and their interests, they learn so much faster than they do when they're, working on something that they're maybe not that interested in. They just delve so deeply into it and just, really latch on. They know all the fact in it. So it's the fact that at our center, they can go from kind of one subject, get it all, and then move on to the next one, instead of kind of trying to follow this pace of kind of the middle road of everyone, right? That's in traditional schools, we kind of have this middle road, and whether you're really high academic or low academic, you're just trying to meet this goal throughout the whole year.
Yes.
Whereas our center, we dive deep into things, and then we learn all we can, and then we go on to something else.
So Jill, my kids, they're Montessori kids. My eldest started at 18 months in Montessori. We loved it. She loved it. She thrived. The Montessori environment allowed her to start doing multiplication, for example, at a preschool level. So she was able to advance at her own pace. So how is your program different than the Montessori program?
So Montessori programs still have a curriculum that they follow, that they provide for the students, for the families. Our center is much more, like I said, we curate our curriculum weekly. So we are really looking at that specific kid and developing offerings and academics that they would be interested in. Whereas a Montessori school, I don't think is that open to a specific student. And we model and use tools from, like I was talking about, an organization called Agile Learning Centers. And the reason that they're called that is that they follow the Agile within the technology sphere, like this Agile type of development. And being Agile means that you can just move from one thing to the other. We don't get stuck. And especially we have community meetings once a month where we talk about, are things working? What do we want to change? Because we're not this huge school system or even a huge school. We're a group of families who are just trying to work on and develop the best possible space for our kids. And it's wonderful because we get to have these discussions, we talk, we change things up. We're really able to adapt to what's going on, in our center.
So really, you mentioned family as parents and teachers, right? Who's maybe listening to our program here. What can we as parents and educators do to empower our kids outside of a learning environment such as yours?
Man, that's a great question. So I think one of the first things that you can do is encourage your kids to pursue their own passions, and to find out what they are. I mean, some of our students that have come from traditional public schools, they have no idea. Somebody has told them their whole life what to do. You're going to sit down, you're going to do this, worksheet to warm yourself up for the day. And then we're going to roll into this, and then you're going to go to this class. And so it's been very structured their whole life. Even if you're in sports and ballet or, dance, it's very structured. And so when they get into an environment where someone says, what do you want to do? This is your day. I don't know what I want to do. I have no idea. So part of it is helping them figure out, what do you want to do, and then encouraging them to pursue those things. And again, my next point is to give them a voice in making their own decisions. Let them pick out their clothes. Let them pick maybe not every time pick what they want to eat, but give them that choice a few times a week to choose, and that's empowering them, giving them a voice in the decisions of maybe where you're going to travel on your vacation, and let them help you plan that. They're going to be so much more invested in it, and they're going to learn that they do have a voice within their family. I think you can encourage them to solve their own problems, especially with their friends. So many times as parents, we want to jump in. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want anybody to get their feelings hurt. We want everybody to just have a great time and be so happy. But that's not real life.
That world,
we work with people all the time where we think, oh my gosh, I just want to tell this person how it is. But we have to learn how to communicate with different people, right? You have to learn how to do that, where you're talking with one person a certain way, and then you're moving on to the next person and you're talking with them in a different way. And so by allowing them to solve their own problems, maybe not all the time, but especially the small ones, you're giving them, again, you're empowering them and giving that voice, and also teaching them empathy, because, when kids get together, they're going to let each other know how they feel most of the time. And through that, promote some teamwork. So if you do get called into the conversation for helping solve problems and things like that, promote kids working as a team and working together and compromising and finding that, because that's what life is about. We're all in this together. We're all here. We're all going through the struggle, and we should be a team. We should be on each other's side. And that's what I try to teach my kids all the time. And through that, it's, you teach empathy through experience. So you let them have these experiences, you allow them to express their emotions. If a kid is crying, or if your child is upset, or a student in your class is upset, there's a reason behind that. And even if you feel like it's something small, or it's insignificant, or it's really not that big of a deal, you're telling them that their emotions are not valid, and that the way that they're feeling is not okay, which it totally is. We all have moments. We all have breakdowns. We all have moments of just complete and utter feeling of helplessness. And instead of telling them that is not right, and to stop crying and to stop having that, we should say, it's okay, but how are we going to move forward from this circumstance? And so the last thing I will say is to listen more than you talk. And this is hard for me. Believe me, I am definitely coming from a place of being a public educator where I was in control. And that's very important in public education, because kids can get hurt, and there's a lot of different things that, you're dealing with as an educator and as a school district. That control is a huge part of public education right now. And something that's great about our center is that because it's so small, we can give up control. We can give that control to the kids. And by listening and allowing them to talk, instead of you telling them how to solve the problem and you telling them how they should feel, if you just stop and listen you're going to learn so much more about your kid. You're going to learn so much more about your student. You're going to learn so much more about the person that you're trying to have this conversation with. And then hopefully build trust, build that communication up. And I just think that really empowers kids to find that voice when they are having those social issues with other kids. They know how to talk because you have allowed them to do it with you.
I love it. And every item that you spoke of is very, very close to any parent's heart, I think. Exactly. So with that, are there any resources that you'd recommend, perhaps books or, something that, we can share with people who's listening?
Right. So this type of education seems like something you might be interested in. I would recommend going to agilelearningcenters.org. That's a great resource. And you can see a bunch of different schools that are similar to ours or learning centers that are similar to ours. Mm-hmm. Also, the Alliance for Self-Directed Education. Their website is self-directed.org. They are an amazing resource. So many different articles for just such a wide spectrum of if your kid is in school, even if your kid is in traditional public schools, what are other ways that you can help them outside of school self-direct themselves and in education? And then some books, I would say one that I would start with is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. That book is just such a wonderful way. It's not even just communicating with kids, it's just communicating with humans on a level of, just compassion and having empathy for other people. So many times when people upset us, we think about what we're feeling. And he really teaches you to think about what need from the other person is not being met. And what can you do to kind of meet that need so that you can have your own needs met as well. There's another great book called Untigering by Irish Chen. This is a really good book if you consider yourself like a
Tiger mom.
Believe me, but prior to COVID, that was me 100%. I mean, I wanted my daughter to be perfect. I wanted her to behave. I wanted her to be sweet and wonderful and somebody that everybody was going to look at and think, that is a good kid. And yeah, she resisted that because she's 3 and 4. And so that book really opened my eyes to empowerment. Empowering kids isn't always perfect, and it doesn't always look like your kid is necessarily like well behaved in the ideas in the standards of society. Mm-hmm. But I look at my daughter now that we've gone through this journey, and I mean, to hear her talk to other students, to hear her talk to other kids and express, no, I don't want to do that, or I'm in, the way that she can communicate now is just so wonderful. And it's difficult at times because when you empower them, you're also empowering them, to kind of go back against what you're saying. Sometimes she keeps me on my toes and she keeps me honest, I feel like. So that's a great book. Another one is Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. That's a great book. And then the last one that I'll say is The School in the Cloud by Sugata Mitra. That is a really beautiful story. His whole story has great TED Talks that are all about his kind of developing this idea of a self-oriented learning environment. He has some really great ideas and insights into that.
So now I'm going to be buried in books for about a month here. I love it.
And of course, people can always reach out to me if they want to talk more about it or learn more about our program or things that they can do just as parents or teachers. Because I was a teacher for a long time too.
And that's exactly what my next question is. If someone specifically wanted to just chat with you or ask you questions about Sapna, how do they do that?
Right. So you can give me a call. My number is 904-705-6940. So you can always just call or text. And then my email is joe@sapna.academy. And a lot of times you can show up at the link and take a tour, and I'm usually pretty much hanging out. So you could just kind of try to catch me that way too.
Yes. Excellent. Well, Joe, I enjoy this a lot. I learned a lot today. I know our viewers and listeners have learned a lot from this short conversation. I could probably ask you a lot more questions, but I'm not going to do that. So I'll allow our listeners to just take the time to figure out what it is as part of this interview applies to them, and perhaps they can read some of the books that you talked about, or just reach out to you or to me. I am also at the link, so I can just direct you down to Joe. So
Exactly.
works out really nicely. So thank you again. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Information shared during the show are opinions of the speakers. They are not legal, financial, or tax advice specific to you. Consult your own specialist, attorney, accountant, financial planner, or insurance advisor for your specific situation.